Hello Elm class, lovely to see you. You can see behind me the artwork is growing. Got some fish weaving, beautiful work from everybody in Elm class, and I have been showing them your work that you've been sending me as well, so keep it up. On to chapter 4. Do you remember the lion was up in the tree? There he is. Tom didn't realise. What will happen next? Sam was lying on the bed of hay which Tom had spread out for him in a corner of the room. The rest of Ghost Cottage was full of hay bales stacked up to the ceiling. "You've got the whole cottage to yourself," said Tom. "There'll be a few mice and rats around, but you like a good rat chase anyway, don't you? You'll be warm enough here, and I'll be back tomorrow with some food after I get back from school. I'll bring some water too to wash that cut of yours, and remember, not a bark out of you, not a whimper, you understand?" Sam seemed to, for his head was on one side, his ears pricked and listening. "If Dad finds you here, you're done for. You know that, don't you?" Tom crouched down beside Sam and scratched him behind the ears where he liked it. "Night, Sam. Be good. See you tomorrow then." The next morning, Tom sat by himself in the front of the bus, as far away from everyone as he could. He wondered if Claire Newman had forgotten about the meat and the camera, but he need not have worried. As he got off the bus, she was waiting for him, and they went off together around the back of the bicycle shed so they could talk without being overheard. "You got it?" he asked, and she smiled and patted her satchel. "Beef scraps," she said, "and I've got my camera too, all in here." "Did you see him again?" "No," said Tom, "but he's done what you said he would. He's gone and killed 3 of my dad's lambs." And he told Claire all about Sam and how he'd found him lying hurt in the woods. "Dad thinks Sam did it, and if he finds him, he's going to have him put to sleep. But he won't find him, because I've hidden him somewhere safe, somewhere they won't find him. But we've got to prove it was the lion that did it, Claire. I can't keep Sam hidden forever. We've got to find that lion. We have got to." "He'll come for the meat," Claire said. "You'll see." "Where are you going to put it?" "Haven't thought, really," Tom said. "He was heading off down through the woods towards the moor after he killed the lambs. Sam must have been following him, and that's where I found him, down by the stream. If the lion's been there once, he might come back again, I suppose." "That's as good a place as any," Claire said. "Perhaps he'll come back to drink there. He's got to drink. You've got to put the meat right by the stream, somewhere where it's muddy." "Why?" "Footprints," said Claire. "You've got to be sure it's him taking the meat, haven't you? I mean, it could be a buzzard or a fox or a crow or anything. I looked it up in a book and I done a tracing of a mountain lion's footprint. It's in the camera case." She checked to see that no one was looking and then took out the bag of meat and the camera and stuffed it down the bottom of Tom's bag. "Can you bring some more tomorrow?" Tom asked. "He may not come for it first time." "I'll bring some every day until he does," Claire said. "Father won't miss it. It's only scraps. Goes into sausages anyway, and he likes sausage meat, doesn't he?" She turned to go. "I'm glad you gave Barry what for yesterday. I'd have done it myself, only I'm a bit small. He's always on about my glasses and about how small I am. Good luck." And she was gone. Tom wondered why he'd never talked to her much before. Perhaps it was because she was always reading. "She's the first girl I've ever really liked," Tom thought. All day, Tom could think of nothing but Sam and the lion. He got 2 detentions for not paying attention, but he didn't mind. That afternoon, as soon as he got off the bus, he raced down across the farm to Ghost Cottage. Sam was waiting by the door as he opened it. He jumped up at him, licking Tom's face and nose and ears until he found something more interesting in Tom's bag. Tom scooped out a handful of meat scraps and fed them to the dog, bit by bit. "It's not really for you," he said, "but she's put plenty in here. The rest's for the lion, Sam. I've just got to get one photograph of him and I can take you home again. I want to see their faces, Sam, when they see it really was a lion." Sam seemed a lot stronger now, although he was limping on his bad leg. Tom spent as long as he could with Sam, cleaning the cut again and talking to him. Sam whimpered a bit as he left, but when Tom stole back to the window to make sure he was all right, Sam had his nose in the hay bales, sniffing out mice and rats, and he seemed quite happy. "Bit late back, aren't you, Tom?" said his mother. "Bus was late," Tom said, and he felt his father look at him sharply. "Funny," he said. "Thought I heard it go by the end of the lane some time ago. You've been off looking for Sam, haven't you? Look at your shoes, they're covered in mud." "All right, so I did," Tom shouted, "and when I do find him, I'll take him away from here and never come back. I won't let you put him to sleep, Dad. I won't let you." He was sent to his room without any tea, but he knew he'd be called down just as soon as his father had gone out to milk the cows. So his mum lets him off a bit. His dad's a bit stricter. "You must be more reasonable," said his mother. "Your dad's only doing what's right. You can't have a sheep killer for a sheep dog. You know that much." "Sam didn't kill the sheep. I told you that, Mum. It was the lion." His mother shook her head. "I just don't understand it when you go on and on with such a ridiculous story." "It's true, Mum," said Tom. His mother shrugged her shoulders. "Oh, just eat your baked beans, Tom, and let's not talk about it any more," she said. That night he waited in bed until he was quite sure everyone in the house was asleep. Within a few minutes he was dressed in all his warm clothes and putting on his boots and coat by the back door. He had Claire's camera around his neck. It was bitterly cold outside as he made his own way down across the field towards the wood. There was one bright star and a half moon that lit up the night. Once inside the wood, he trod carefully, trying not to rustle the leaves. It was a silent night, except for the rush of the stream and a pair of owls calling to each other across the valley. Tom made his way along the stream to the spot in the wood where he had found Sam the day before. He soon found a perfect place for the meet. On the near side of the stream was a muddy beach, and just above it was the stump of an old tree. To reach the tree stump, the lion would have to put a foot in the mud. He left the meat in a pile on the tree stump and sat down behind the trunk of a tree some distance away and waited. Within half an hour, his feet were freezing, and he could no longer feel his thumbs, but he stayed there, his camera at the ready. The hours passed, and nothing came. He longed to curl up on the ground and to go to sleep, but he forced himself to stay awake. All night long he sat there, until the first grey light of dawn came up over the moor. Before he left, he searched the mud around the tree stump for any footprints, but there were none. "I know you're there. I'm leaving some behind for you," he called out. "The rest is for Sam." Above him, the mountain lion lay in his tree and watched the boy scoop the meat into his coat pocket. He waited until Tom had gone before letting himself down and bounding over to the tree stump. He wolfed down the meat and licked the tree stump clean. Tom stayed with Sam in the cottage that morning as long as he could. He watched him eat and then lay down beside him in the hay, cuddled up close to him to get warm. "He'll come, Sam. He's got to come. I'm going to spend every night down by that stream till he does. Don't care how long it takes." He crawled into bed when he got home. That was where his mother found him, fast asleep, when she came to wake him. In fact, he was so difficult to wake that he would almost miss the school bus. Every day after that, Claire brought meat to school, and every night Tom put the meat out on the tree stump for the lion and waited. One night, a family of squabbling badgers ate the lot while Tom looked on, and once a fox came paddling across the stream and helped himself. But no lion came. And what's more, Tom never found a footprint in the mud that even looked like the drawing Claire had given him. He began to lose heart. Maybe, he thought, maybe they're right after all. maybe I imagined everything. He wasn't to know that every night he spent in the woods, he was being watched from the branches high up in the tree behind him. He wasn't to know that the lion waited every night till Tom had gone before he came down from the tree for his meat. And the lion never put a foot on the mud. He didn't have to. He leapt from the grass bank onto the tree stump with no effort at all. After a week, Tom was tired out. He kept falling asleep in lessons, and Mr. Morgan told him not to watch television so late. His mother thought he was sickening for something and wanted to keep him away from school. Now, normally there was nothing that Tom would have liked better, but now Tom needed his supply of lion meat, and school was the only place he could get it. He had to go to school. Claire would be there, waiting for him in the playground every morning. "Any luck?" she'd ask. "No," he'd say, "nothing." "He'll come," she would say. "He's hungry. He'll smell the meat. He'll come, you'll see." And that was all Tom wanted to hear. But when he did come at last, one cold and windy night, Tom was fast asleep. He never heard the lion spring out of his tree. He never heard him come right up to the boy's face and then walked away towards the tree stump to eat his meat. It was only because a piece of the meat fell into the stream and the lion went splashing in after it that Tom woke. Up until that moment, Tom had never been frightened of the idea of meeting the lion, but now he found himself only a few paces from him, and he could see just how huge and powerful the creature was. He was suddenly stiff with fear. The boy and the lion looked at each other for a few moments, and then the lion settled down to his feast again. Tom got to his feet as slowly as he could. He remembered the camera and the picture he had waited all this time to take, but he only had one thought in his head now: to run. He backed away from the lion, never taking his eyes off him, and then turned and ran. He never saw the root that tripped him up. Lights flashed in his head as it hit the side of the tree trunk, and then he knew nothing more. When he woke up, he felt something heavy pinning him to the ground. He opened his eyes slowly. A giant paw was resting on his chest, and the lion's eyes were peering into his. And you'll have to come back to find out what happens in chapter 5. See you soon.